Hello, Lilu.
How are you doing?
I'm doing so great, and I'm so happy to talk to you.
I am thrilled to be speaking with you today, one of my heroes.
Oh, thank you so much.
I was truly inspired by your story. You wrote the Soul of Money, an amazing book, and you're such a powerful leader, and you've raised a lot of money for many causes, and I was really moved by your book. I even started my book with the story of me reading your book, and because it was on money and abundance, and there was so much struggle that I had around money. I would love to hear from you. What is your view on money? How do you see money?
Oh, well. Oh, first of all, thank you so much for being such an enthusiastic, generative, loving spirit. I just got to say that. It's a joy to connect with you over the seas and over the internet. And
Thank
wow.
you.
Well, my view of money is that, first of all, we're so confused and upset and anxious, and there's so much suffering around it that it's pretty clear something's way off in our relationship with money. Maybe not yours, but the cultural relationship with money is so distorted and so dysfunctional and so troubled and generates so much suffering. But for me, if we could just clear that away and see that money is merely something we invented. We made it up. We created it about 4,500 years ago, and we created it to facilitate the sharing of our goods and resources with one another in an equitable way. That was the point of money when we first invented it. So it was a really, really good idea to share our goods and resources with one another in an equitable and fair way. And money was invented by us, by human beings, to facilitate all of that, to make it easier. So that if you're the cobbler, let's say, and I'm the pig farmer, or let's say I'm the cobbler and you're the pig farmer, and I want a pig, I really need one. So I would just hope that you needed your shoes repaired, or that you had children that you needed shoes made for. But if you didn't, then I was kind of out of luck. So then I would have to find out what you needed. And you might say, well, I need some corn. I don't need my shoes fixed or any shoes made, but I do need corn for my pigs. So I would go to the corn farmer and hope that he needed his shoes fixed, or that he had children that needed shoes. And if he did, or she did, then I would fix them, and I would get some corn, and then I would fix their shoes, and then I would have the corn to give to the pig farmer so I could get a pig. So it was just very, very cumbersome and complicated. And so we made up this incredible thing to make it all easier called money. And that was a wonderful idea way back 4,500 years ago, until it started to get so complicated with banking and interest and derivatives of derivatives of derivatives. And now we're so far afield from using money the way it was designed to facilitate our relationships with one another, that it's kind of gone the other way. We use it to dominate and control and marginalize, accumulate and hoard, and think we're more important than other people. And it divides and separates us. We even have our neighborhoods that are poor neighborhoods and rich neighborhoods and gated neighborhoods. And so we've lost our way with money. And what I think money is actually something a lot like water. It flows through every life. When it's flowing, when it's moving, when it's used purely and clearly and cleanly, it, just like water, can nourish, can water, can make things grow, can cleanse, can purify. But just like water, when it's toxic, when it has that toxic, ugly energy to it, it can make you sick. And when you try to hold on to it, when you try and hoard it, just like when water becomes standing still for too long, it becomes stagnant and becomes toxic to those who are holding on to it. Just like water, money does the same thing. Or like blood that flows through the body that actually cleanses us and nourishes us. When it gets caught somewhere and clots, it can kill. And the same thing's true with money. It is an energy that is meant to flow through the world. It doesn't belong to anyone. It belongs to everyone. And it's our job to receive it in a blessed way, in a way that we're proud of, and then pass it on where it'll do the most good for the most people. And when we do that, we live in the kind of bliss that you exhibit and express.
Thank you. So what is the process for you to kind of clear, clean, transform our relationship to money? Because we have inherited that. We really deeply carry the scarcity and the fears related to money. So how can we move forward into this flow, into this vision of money, into the real definition of money, into the real connection with money and this free flow?
Well, you broke up a little bit, but I think I heard what you said. I'll just say one other thing about money. If you really think about if you think about money, let's say that I go to you for a service. Perhaps let's say you help me with my taxes, and I pay you, let's say $500. And then that $500 you use to pay the healthcare worker that's helping you with your mother. So it's now helped me with my taxes, that $500, and now it's helped you with the care for your mother. And the healthcare worker who receives that $500 then pays the tuition for her daughter's nursery school, which makes it possible for her to work. And so the $500 now is in the hands of the teacher who runs the nursery school. And now she has the $500. And then she pays the $500 to the man who gives her a new refrigerator. And then he gets the $500. So that $500 creates energy, creates value, creates nourishment for all of those lives as we go along. When it's used with ethics and integrity, there's a real beautiful exchange. Where we get off with money is when we start hoarding it, when we try to make money with money. Now, I know everybody does that, including me, but that practice of having money sitting still and drawing interest and producing nothing for anyone, producing no value, or the kind of gambling casino that the stock market is, which, we're all kind of addicted to, whether you're in the stock market or not in the stock market, it kind of captures our attention. And the kind of financial instruments now have taken money in a direction that it moves, our money system moves more and more and more money in the hands of fewer and fewer and fewer people, and marginalizes more and more people, move to the center or down the pyramid bottom. So the actual money system is set up to generate debt and extreme wealth, and that's exactly what's happening. So the system is dysfunctional, and there's lots more I could say about that. But how to free ourselves from all this is really the question.
Despite of the system and the society because a lot of people want to be free. A lot of people want to end the suffering. It is the material, living the material way, I guess, is part of freeing ourselves up. Is it focusing on different things in our lives?
Well, one of the ways to free yourself up is to acknowledge the lies we tell about money. And the lies we tell about money include that we've forgotten that we invented it. We've forgotten that it's not part of the natural world. Money does not grow on trees. Pennies do not fall from heaven. It's our invention. And when you realize that and remember that, there's a little bit of a less of a grip. And then if we actually realize that money doesn't have any meaning except the meaning we assign to it, not only financial meaning, but emotional, psychological, even spiritual meaning, and we've assigned money so much meaning, it's become more important than human life in our culture. People will kill for money. People will make a killing rather than a living. A killing meaning doing something they hate, something that is damaging, something that marginalizes people, something that destroys the environment, and somehow they're find a way to be okay with that because the culture somehow doesn't accuse you of anything. In fact, kind of lauds you for accumulating money. even at the expense of the environment of other people. Or people are making a dime, which is doing something that they hate, that gives them no personal value, that doesn't use their talents and gifts just to bring home a paycheck. Very few people are doing what you're doing, which is making a living. And when people are making a living instead of making a killing or making a dime, they're authentically themselves. They're being compensated, not overcompensated, but compensated for their gifts and talents and their service to the world. And to go back to the lies, we've made money more important than human life, money more important than the natural world, money more important than God or spirit. And that over assigning too much meaning to money has us so confused in our relationship with money that it plays this huge role in our lives. It sort of takes away meaning of our own life. So to be in right relationship with money is kind of the way out, or the way through, I should say, by letting go of those lies. And particularly, the big one I love to talk about is the lie of scarcity. And the lie of scarcity is kind of the central lie that holds together a consumer money culture, a lie that has all of us, even people like you living in an affluent country called France, people like me living in an affluent country like the United States, people who have enough to eat, who have a roof over their head, who have really just quite a full and rich life, always scrambling for more because there's a mindset that there's not enough to go around, that something's going to be left out. We have to make sure it's not us or the people we care about. More of anything and everything's better. And that's just the way that it is. And then this unconscious, unexamined mindset of scarcity is fostered and fomented by commercial culture, by advertising, by marketing. And that kind of mentality, we all get caught up in it. We're seduced into it, and then we actually think it's real. Now, I've worked on hunger and poverty all my life, so I know there's people who don't have enough. I know there's people who need more income, more water, more shelter, and I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about most likely the kind of people who are watching this program who are actually have everything they need and are not in touch with it because they're scrambling for more and their gaze is on getting more rather than paying attention to what's already there. And so the real transformation is letting go or freeing yourself from the unconscious, unexamined mindset of scarcity and recognizing that you live in a sufficient, blessed, bountiful world. And I call that the principle of sufficiency, which I can talk about a lot more.
And give us an example of something that we can do in our own life to start stepping in this kind of unknown realm.
Well, first of all, to recognize that the suffering is in the culture, not so much as we think in us. The culture fosters this suffering, makes you anxious, makes you think you need to be taller or thinner or younger or some other way than you are, and to and not feel so. We take that out of the culture and then personalize it, and so we live in a kind of deficit relationship with what we think we must have, and also with the way we think we must be. And that deficit mentality is now showing up in Europe and in the United States as real, honest-to-God deficit. We live in a deficit culture. The culture values outer riches and puts no value on inner riches. And that's such a distortion of life. And, deep down we all know that it's our inner riches that are most valuable, not our outer riches, not what we accumulate. So if we begin to really pay attention, if you can let go of the minds of scarcity, free yourself from it, even for a moment, and you can do this right now, we can do this right now, and recognize that there is what I call the radical, surprising truth is just waiting for us to recognize it, for attend to it, to realize it, to appreciate it, and to live in what I call the context of sufficiency, which is that experience of enough. And in a consumer culture, there's almost no room for the experience of enough because we're constantly, going towards more. And when you're constantly having your gaze, your attention, your energy focused on more, 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 you don't realize what's already there. So there's a beautiful principle called the context principle of sufficiency that says this, and this is the most important thing I can possibly tell, and that is, if you let go of trying to get more of what you don't really need, which is what all of us are scrambling to get more of, it frees up oceans of energy to turn and pay attention to what you already have. When you pay attention to what you already have, when you appreciate it, when you nourish it, when you begin to see you can make a difference with what's already there, it expands before your very eyes. So once again, if you let go of trying to get more of what you don't really need, it frees up ocean energy to turn and pay attention to what you already have. When you give your attention to what you already have and make a difference with it, it expands before your very eyes. And that's the principle of sufficiency. A shorter way of saying that is what you appreciate appreciates. Mm-hmm. Appreciate appreciates. And so if we can shift out of the mindset of scarcity, then we'll see the radical, surprising truth that's just waiting there for us, which is the context or the truth of sufficiency, that we have enough. We've always had enough. We always will have enough. There'll be times when we'll perhaps go through a divorce or a tragedy or even a bankruptcy. But life gives us exactly what we need in a way that gives us our way of living, that shows us that we're always taken care of. Even when we have something dark that happens to us, if you look back in life, you'll see, as your book probably says, some of the darkest and most challenging things that have happened to us have given us the most benefit, the most value, the most profound blessings and lessons. So to see life as that which constantly provides us exactly what we need, meets us exactly where we are, is really, I think, the truth. And it's different than abundance. Abundance, to me, is the flip side of scarcity. It's way more than you need, really, because you're so afraid you're not going to have enough. But abundance is not a bad thing. I'm just making a distinction between abundance and sufficiency. And I'm talking about sufficiency, being met by the universe, experiencing the exquisite distinction of sufficiency, which isn't really an amount of anything. It's a way of being, a way of living, a way of experiencing life. And I have a wonderful teacher that I want to quote, if it's okay with you, Brother David Steindl-Rast. He's an Austrian Benedictine monk, and he tells a beautiful story about gratitude, which distinguishes and makes it clear what I'm saying about the distinction between sufficiency and abundance. And I say that true abundance can never come from the doorway or through the doorway or portal of more. When you're constantly going through the doorway of more, you end up with lack. Eventually you need more again. Mm-hmm. And that doorway, that portal, will always produce this kind of dissatisfaction and this longing for more. That you can only get to true prosperity and true abundance through the portal or doorway of enough. And when you go through the portal or doorway of enough and appreciate the bounty of what you already have, it expands into true abundance and true prosperity. So his metaphor is this. I asked him one day, he's a wonderful, wonderful guy, and his thing is gratefulness. And he's the greatest living scholar. He's actually a scholar on gratefulness. Mm-hmm. And what a beautiful conversation with Brother David Steindl-Rast. I asked him, Brother David, what's the difference between gratitude and gratefulness? And he said the most wonderful thing. He said, Lynn, gratitude has two great branches. One is gratefulness, and the other is thanksgiving. Gratefulness is the experience of life when the bowl of life is so full that it's almost overflowing, but not quite. The bowl of life is so full that it's bowed at the top, but not yet dribbling over the edges. And that's the experience of the great fullness of life. And when you're in the great fullness of life, you're one with God, you're one with the universe, and there is no other. It's all one. And that's so fulfilling that the bowl of life starts to overflow like a fountain, and that moves you over here into the other branch of gratitude, which is thanksgiving. And when you're in the branch of gratitude called thanksgiving, the bowl of life is constantly overflowing. It's like a huge fountain. And you're so grateful that there's an other because all you want to do is share and give and contribute and serve. And that is so fulfilling that it puts you in the great fullness of life, the other branch of gratitude. And then you're over here and you're one with God and the universe. And you can live your whole life in the two branches of gratitude. And I would say that this branch of gratitude, gratefulness, is a profound experience of sufficiency or enough. And this branch of gratitude is the experience of abundance, where life is so full and blessed that all you want to do is give and serve and share and contribute. And it's when we give, when we share, when we contribute, that we actually experience the fullness of our sufficiency. It's not through trying to get more. It's through sharing what we already have. That's the key to prosperity.
And going from sufficiency to abundance to overflowing is a matter of what? What is the distinction again right there?
Appreciating what you already have, making a difference with it, and sharing it. Once you share your gifts, like you're doing with this program,
Unconditionally.
once you share what you have, you realize its bounty, and it grows in the sharing. It's the opposite of what we think. It's in sharing, in the service, in the contribution that we experience our prosperity. Not in accumulation, but in sharing. You know, I have this phrase, I think it's something in the book, that I long for a day when humanity is known for not for what we accumulate, but for what we allocate to one another. That's how we know ourselves. That we're known by what we share, not what we accumulate, not what we hoard. Because that's the real experience of prosperity, and that's the experience of abundance, and that's the experience of living a healthy and prosperous life.
Isn't it related to also receiving and loving, honoring ourselves?
Absolutely. When you appreciate what's already there, you appreciate yourself. You appreciate the gift of your own life. You appreciate your gifts and talents. You appreciate your body exactly that it is. And actually, the culture doesn't validate that. The consumer culture doesn't validate that. But the human culture does. And indigenous cultures, where I work now in the Amazon, they have a really different view of life. It's all about the community. The well-being is, if the whole community is cared for, then I'll be healthy and well. So the community comes first and then the individual. They don't individuate the way we do. We individuate often at the expense of the community. But they say the community comes first, and then in the nourishment of the community, everyone will be taken care of, including myself. And if someone in an indigenous community takes more than they need, that is strange. That is upsetting for people, because everything's about making sure everyone's taken care of. So when someone takes more than they need, or starts having that habit, they send them to the shaman because they think they're mentally ill. That's what mental illness looks like in an indigenous community.
Wow.
So if we can start seeing that we have everything, that our life is really if we start looking at the great fullness of our life, appreciating and living in the gratitude of just being alive, being able to live in this extraordinary world, uh, it changes everything. Gratitude is so key to a fulfilling life.
I love when you say, we have a soul, money doesn't, which pretty much, we have this connection, this amazing spacious beingness, and we put all our focus on the money, like if it had a meaning.
Well, we can give soul to money. Money doesn't have soul, but we do, and we can give soul to money. And that's, much of my life I've been fundraising and generating philanthropy and being a philanthropist and inspiring everybody, even dollar heirs, to be philanthropists. The word philanthropy means love of humankind. And that experience of sharing and that experience of making a difference with what you have is where health and well-being of a society and of a human being comes from. And so that incredible experience of giving soul to money and then passing it along is what philanthropy is taking your love from money and making it available to other people. And that's giving soul to money.
So that's the part I had missed. That's the aha moment. We can actually give soul to money.
Yes, yes. Because we have soul, money doesn't. But money has the meaning that we give it. And if we imbue it with our heart, with our love, with our courage, with our commitment, then it does great work in the world. But if we use it to be greedy, or to be selfish, or to marginalize, or to control, or to do anything at the expense of others, then money carries that karma. So money's innocent. It's really how we use it and what the intention is that gives money its beauty or gives money its destructive power. And we've all seen what money can do when it's born of love, and we've all seen what money can do when it's not. So money's innocent. We
Mm.
have the opportunity to give it the power that we want it to have.
And how can we find our wealth? How do you define wealth?
Well, the word wealth, actually, the etymology of the word wealth comes from well-being, well-being. And true wealth, I believe, comes from the well of being that is in every life, that is in every relationship, that is at the source, the heart of love. The well of being is really the source of wealth. And then if we use our financial life to enhance, to expand that wealth, that's true wealth. Um, so the well of being is available to every living being, every person. I've worked in many parts of this world, and one of the most beautiful places, and I'm about to go there soon, where they understand true wealth is Africa. You would think not, because in economic terms we would call that country or that part of the world in those countries. It's a continent, not a country, but many of the countries in Africa are considered poor, and some of the people in those countries are considered poor. And I've really stopped using or describing people as poor because I've never really met a poor person. I've met people who are whole and complete, who are intelligent, who are innovative, who are creative in circumstances of poverty. And what's poor is the circumstances, not them, whole and complete. And often in Africa, in some of the most dire circumstances, like after the 1985 Ethiopian famine, I met some of the most extraordinary, brave, creative, innovative women I've ever met in my life, who lost every one of their children to that horrible famine. But in their being, in their understanding of who they are, was a deep, deep, deep well of being from living in also harsh circumstances that you wouldn't wish on anyone. But the wealth of who they are, the depth of richness. I'll call them juicy African women. I just love African women. I'm about to go to Liberia and Ethiopia in a week. And I can't wait to get back to Africa and be with the well of being that's part of that part of the world. We all have that. It's available to every single person. And often people who've accumulated tremendous amounts of money are farthest away from that true wealth because they get caught up and we start treating them as if they are their money rather than they're whole, complete people living in the circumstances of excess resources, which can sometimes be very, very devastating to the soul.
So how do you deal with that relationship with people having the money? I mean, you raised money, you have met many people with the money. They might not see the money this way. Might have a different understanding. What is your recommendation for us in society to deal with people that don't have this perception? Is it possible that by just our presence and having a conversation, we can open them up and they can shift? Or how do you deal with that day to day?
There's a story in my book about Mother Teresa who really taught me that the vicious cycle of wealth is sometimes as intractable and painful, and there's as much suffering there is in the vicious cycle of poverty. And she really taught me how important it is to have compassion for people caught in the vicious cycle of wealth. Often they become rude, sometimes entitled, sometimes overbearing. And yet inside of that human being is a loving, wanting to be loved, humble, human being. And you see that sometimes wealth and power turns people into somebody they don't mean to be, and have compassion for the trap it is, and treat them the way we treat each other, the way you're treating me, the way I treat you, with respect, really having space for your beauty, your exquisite commitment, your heart, and also know that you probably have some blind spots and you've probably got some things you're working on. If we can see people as caught in a system that a commercial culture, consumer culture, kind of turns them into someone they don't mean to be, and have some compassion for how caught they may be, and I'm suggesting that they are caught, especially if their behavior is inconsistent with their humanity, then by relating to their humanity rather than their enormous wealth, they can start to come out of that construct. And one of the ways that I do that is I raise money. Because being a fundraiser, some people think it's sort of a distasteful thing, but I think it's such a holy, sacred gift to be a fundraiser. Because what we're really doing is, those of us who have the courage to fundraise, is to facilitate the reallocation of the world's financial resources away from fear, consumption, destruction of the environment, destruction of our own heart and soul, to reallocate that same money to what we love, the health and well-being of our communities, of our children, of our environment, the health and well-being of all children of all species for all time. So to facilitate that reallocation of resources in the world and also in people's lives is what fundraising is. And to lift the veil of discouragement and disappointment and resignation off people's eyes, and have them see that the money that flows through their life, whether it's a raging river of money, which it is for some wealthy people, or a little trickle like it is for some people who are resource poor, the opportunity to move it where it will reflect what you care most about, the heart and soul of who you are, and reach the world. And so I speak to people caught in that vicious cycle of wealth in a way that they can release that money and know that it doesn't really belong to them. They're just trustees of it for the moment. So that's how them, but anybody can deal with them with more compassion for how they might be caught.
Did it ever happen to you to say no to some money or to people that wanted to donate some money, but it was for the wrong reason? Have you ever had to say no to?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I had a very important day in my life when I was a young fundraiser where I received a $50,000 check from an executive of a very large food company that was in trouble in Indonesia, and they had done some very, very nasty and unconscious and unethical things. And the press had got a hold of that and were exposing them, and their stock was plummeting. And so they decided ending world hunger and invited my organization, the Hunger Project, to send someone to meet with the CEO. And when I met with this man, it was very clear that there was commitment, that there was no heart in our encounter. He kind of wanted to dismiss me, and all he wanted to do was get this $50,000 check out of the drawer of his desk and over to us so that they could kind of use it to cleanse their image. And when he handed me the check, I remember very clearly, he pushed it across his big fancy desk with the tips of his fingers. And it was a computer check made out to the Hunger Project, $50,000. And it was in 1978, a long time ago, so it was really a lot of money. And he pushed the check from his side of the desk across to my side of the desk where I was sitting in front of him. And it came toward me, this $50,000 check. I felt the guilt and the shame and the wrongdoing and the lack of integrity of the company embedded in this check like a dump, like a payoff. And when I took the check and put it in my briefcase and then left and thanked, of course, but felt kind of dirty and unsatisfied with the encounter and went down the elevator. I was at the top of a very high building in a Midwestern city. When I got to the street level, I was sick to my stomach. I felt nauseous. I felt like I was going to throw up. And I had accepted this kind of toxic dump, you might say. And can I tell the rest of that story from my book?
Yeah.
So, so I felt really like I'd done something that wasn't right by accepting the money.
Yeah.
And I got on a plane, and I was going to New York City, and I got in a very intense Midwestern storm system, and it took actually literally 9 or 10 hours to get to New York, or maybe even more than that. And by the time I got to New York, it was nighttime. The meeting in the Midwestern city was in the early morning. And I had to check my case. I felt sick on the plane. I got to New York to the airport, and that night I had a small fundraising event in Harlem and at a Harlem church. And so I went to that Harlem church, and I was very late, and it was still raining like crazy. And the people in the Harlem church were waiting for their speaker, who was really 2 hours late. There was no cell phone, so email that. So they just sat there and waited for me. And when I got there, and I walked in front of this beautiful group of people, about 75 African American people, in a Harlem church on a rainy night, a dark rainy night in New York City, and I looked at them. I just started to cry because I could see their humanity. I could see how eager they were to make a difference with their life and money. And somehow it was a stark kind of contrast with this meeting with the CEO, who, by the way, when I met with him, it was early morning. The sun was rising behind him in the windows at the top of this very big building, and he was back in a way that I couldn't even see his face, the light from behind him. So I kind of never even saw this guy's face, really. And then when I arrived in Harlem, and it's a dark, dark night, and it's raining, but it was a basement. It was lit with fluorescent lights, and I went up in front, and I turned around and looked at these people, and they were so present, so there, so beautiful, so, I don't know, just so, there was so much humanity there. And so I shared about the Hunger Project, the work I was funding, asking them to fund. Talked a lot about our work in Africa. And then I asked for money. And a woman stood up, and I will never forget her. And she was thin, slender, really quite a lovely woman. She was an older woman, probably 70 or 75 years old. She had gray hair, and it was parted in the middle, and it was in a tidy bun at the back of her neck, and she had on an old-fashioned maid's uniform. And her skin was a very dark, beautiful black, and she held a purse on her arm, and she had on a raincoat, and she stood up and she said that her name was Gertrude, and she did people's wash, and that she knew a lot about money. And she said to me, this is where I learned about money's like water. She said, money, is just like water. And then she referred to the rain outside, and there were buckets around the room because there were some leaks in this basement. And she referred to the buckets and the rain, and she said, it's just like water. It flows throughout the world. It flows through everything. For some people, it goes through like a rushing river and floods their life, confuses them, and they start drowning in it. For other people, it comes through just the regular, and for other people like me, it comes through like a little trickle. But I know it doesn't belong to me. I know it belongs to everyone, and it's just moving around. And when it comes to me, first of all, I'm so grateful. And second, I know it can nourish my life, and then I can pass it on, and it's my duty, my responsibility, my privilege to pass on them where it'll do the most good for the most folks. And that's what money's for. It's just like water. And so it was so profound. And she said, I've got $50 in my purse here, and I have a checking account, I have credit cards, but I have money. And I realized tonight I came here to give it to you for world hunger. And she walked up the aisle of this Harlem church, and by now I was crying. I was so moved by this woman, Gertrude. And she handed her $50 to me. And after she did, every single person, all 75 people, no one sat down, everyone stood and lined up behind her. And they gave me their $13, their $25, their $66. And I had all this money in my hands, and I started putting it in my briefcase, where the check, $50,000 from the food executive, was on the bottom and was face down. And by the end of the procession, everyone sat down again, and they started singing, which is what happens in an African American church in Harlem. And we were all hugging and singing and crying. It was just awesome. It was the epitome of true wealth, the true well of being. And I went back to my hotel then after that exquisite night, and I counted the money, and there was $667.33. And I had a little pile on my bed in my little hotel, and then I looked at the $50,000 check, and I realized the $667.33 with Gertrude's $50 in the very heart of it was worth more for the end of hunger and would do more work for the end of world hunger, because it came with such love and such heart, that $50,000 check, and that the $50,000 check might poison us. And so I sent the $50,000 check back with a letter to the CEO, letting him know that I couldn't feel the commitment or real connection that would make that a true contribution ending world hunger. And it was very scary, because we needed that. But it was the thing that God told me to do, or the universe told me to do. I just had to do that. And it would be the end of the story, but it's not. There's a little P.S. that I want to say, and that is 4 or 5 years later, I was in my office in San Francisco, my Hunger Project office, and I got a handwritten letter from that same CEO. And in that handwritten envelope, in that handwritten letter, he said the following, something like this. He said, I will never forget the return of the $50,000 check, although I hardly remember the meeting when I gave it to you. But the letter and the return of the money really shook me up. and upset me, bothered me, stunned me. And shortly after I received your letter and the return of that $50,000, I retired and got a very, very nice retirement package. And I started to pay attention for the first time to the issue of world hunger. This is the guy who was the head of a food company. And I started paying attention to hunger issues. I started paying attention to your organization. And I am now clear that I can send, and hope you will accept, a check from my own pocket, from my own resources, that comes with my heart, that comes with my commitment, for $250,000.
Yay!
And that was the ending of that story.
Magnificent. What a great, beautiful, warm-hearted, loving story. My goodness, I love it. So inspiring. So inspiring to meet you. I know some people would love to meet you in person. You're traveling for a seminar soon, aren't you?
Oh, I am. Yes. Well, I'm doing. So I'll just say that one of the things that I am working on right now, which sounds completely inconsistent with my message, but it's not, I have a 9-month webinar course with two colleagues that I adore, Dave Ellis and Tammy White. And it's really going to be an extraordinary breakthrough course to break people through from suffering around money to peace of mind around money. And the name of the course is More Money Guaranteed. Excuse me, More Money Guaranteed. And why I'm saying is because if you take the course and you don't end up with a minimum of $40,000 more than you started with when you take the course, we will return your complete tuition. And we will teach people financial literacy, how to understand sufficiency and enough, how to have enough grow into abundance rather than going through the doorway of scarcity and more. We will teach people we will coach people, have 2 in-person 3 trainings. You will have a personal coach. It will be an extraordinary turning point in people's lives if they take 9 months out of 2013 and participate in this webinar. And they can learn about it by going to more-money-guaranteed.com, or they can go to my website, soulmoney.org. And so I wanted to tell everybody about that because we're just enrolling people now, and there's a very high tuition, and it is and it's going to take a big time. But our promise is that you will have a complete and total transformation in your relationship with money, and it will be permanent and it will last you the rest of your life. So we're really not kidding about this, and that's what I wanted to share with people, and hope lots of people go to the website and learn about it and make an application for it.
It's pretty bold, huh? You're bold. Love is bold.
Very bold. It's a very bold course, and the tuition is very high. It's a little shocking, but you get the entire tuition back, and plus $20,000 if you take the course and do everything that we say. So ultimately it's free, or you get $20,000 out of the course, you could say, because the tuition is $20,000, but our guarantee is that you will end up with $40,000 more than you started with if you follow our methodology and really transforming your relationship with money. So that's a little scary for people, but I'll tell you, it'll be totally worth it, and you will end up with way more money than you started with, and a completely different relationship with money and life. So that's what I wanted to share.
It starts in February.
It starts February 7th, yeah.
Coming up soon. Thank you so much, Lynne. It was good, really, really good speaking with you, and I'm excited to share this with as many people as possible all around the world, because I know these videos, and thanks to the internet, it reaches Africa, it reaches South America, China, everywhere.
It does.
China, they don't have YouTube. My friends can't see it from there, but it's really spreading.
I love that, and just thank you for reading my book, The Soul of Money, and I invite people to get my book, The Soul of Money, and get that on Amazon or on my website, soulofmoney.org. and also to learn about the Pachamama Alliance,
Oh yeah.
PACHAMAMA.org, which is the work I do in the Amazon, which is also wonderful. And I invite everybody to join me with that. So thank you for the good news you spread around the world, for the heart and love with which you do it, and for finding me so that we could meet.
I love this, and I look forward to doing this in person one day. Thank you so much, Lynn. Much love
So,
from France.
are you in Paris? Is that where you are?
I'm in Nantes on the west coast, northwest coast of France.
Well, I'd love to. I'd love to come visit you too.
We have to arrange that. To have a big money conversation in France wouldn't be a bad thing right now.
That would be a good thing.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Bye bye. Around it that it's pretty clear something's way off in our relationship with money. Maybe not yours, but the cultural relationship with money is so distorted and so dysfunctional and so troubled and generates so much suffering. But for me, if we could just clear that away and see that money is merely something we invented, we made it up, we created it about 4,500 years ago, and we created it to facilitate the sharing of our goods and resources with one another in an equitable way. That was the point of money when we first invented it. So it was a really, really good idea to share our goods and resources with one another in an equitable and fair way. And money was invented by us, by human beings, to facilitate all of that, to make it easier. So that if you're the cobbler, let's say, and I'm the pig farmer, or let's say I'm the cobbler and you're the pig farmer, and I want a pig. I really need one. So I would just hope that you needed your shoes repaired, or that you had children that you needed shoes made for. But if you didn't, then I was kind of out of luck. So then I would have to find out what you needed. And you might say, well, I need some corn. I don't need my shoes fixed or any shoes made, but I do need corn for my pigs. So I would go to the corn farm. Can cleanse, can purify, but just like water, when it's toxic, when it has that toxic, ugly energy to it, it can make you sick. And when you try to hold on to it, when you try and hoard it, just like when water becomes standing still for too long, it becomes stagnant and becomes toxic to those who are holding on to it. Just like water, money does the same thing. Or like blood that flows through the body that actually cleanses us and nourishes us. When it gets caught somewhere and clots, it can kill. And the same thing's true with money. It is an energy that is meant to flow through the world. It doesn't belong to anyone. It belongs to everyone. And it's our job to receive it in a blessed way, in a way that we're proud of, and then pass it on where it'll do the most good for the most people. And when we do that, we live in the kind of bliss that you exhibit and express.
Thank you. So what is the process for you to kind of clear, clean, transform our relationship to money? Because we have inherited that. We really deeply carry the scarcity and the fears related to money. So how can we move forward into this flow? Into
Farmer and hope that he needed his shoes fixed, or that he had children that needed shoes, and if he did or she did, then I would fix them, and I would get some corn, and then I would fix their shoes, and then I would have the corn to give to the pig farmer so I could get a pig. So it was just very, very cumbersome and complicated, and so we made up this incredible thing to make it all easier called money. And that was a wonderful idea way back 4,500 years ago, until it started to get so complicated with banking and interest and derivatives of derivatives of derivatives. And now we're so far afield from using money the way it was designed to facilitate our relationships with one another that it's kind of gone the other way. We use it to dominate and control and marginalize, accumulate and hoard and think we're more important than other people, and it divides and separates us. We even have our neighborhoods that are poor neighborhoods and rich neighborhoods and gated neighborhoods, and so it's we've lost our way with money. And what I think money is actually something a lot like water. It flows through every life. When it's flowing, when it's moving, when it's used purely and clearly and cleanly, it, just like water, can nourish, can make things grow.
this vision of money, into the real definition of money, into the real connection with money and this free flow.
Well, you broke up a little bit, but I think I heard what you said. I'll just say one other thing about money. If you really think about if you think about money, let's say that I go to you for a service. Perhaps let's say you help me with my taxes, and I pay you, let's say $500, and then that $500 you use to pay the healthcare worker that's helping you with your mother. So it's now helped me with my taxes, that $500, and now it's helped you with the care for your mother. And the healthcare worker who receives that $500 then pays the tuition for her daughter's nursery school, which makes it possible for her to work. And so the $500 now is in the hands of the teacher who runs the nursery school. And now she has the $500. And then she pays the $500 to the man who gives her a new refrigerator. And then he gets the $500. So that $500 creates energy, creates value, creates nourishment for all of those lives as we go along. When it's used.
Hello, Lynne.
Hello, Lilu.
How are you doing?
I'm doing so great, and I'm so happy to talk to you.
I am thrilled to be speaking with you today, one of my heroes.
Oh, thank you so much.
I was truly inspired by your story. You wrote the Soul of Money, an amazing book, and you're such a powerful leader, and you've raised a lot of money for many causes, and I was really moved by your book. You know, I even started my book with the story of me reading your book, and because it was on money and abundance, and there was so much struggle that I had around money. I would love to hear from you. What is your view on money? How do you see money?
Oh, well. First of all, thank you so much for being such an enthusiastic, generative, loving spirit. I just got to say that. It's a joy to connect with you over the seas and over the internet. And wow.
Thank you.
Well, my view of money is that, first of all, we're so confused and upset and anxious, and there's so much suffering